Hello, 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 everybody, and good evening, and welcome to Songwriting Simplified over here in Edinburgh, in Scotland. I apologise that we're not over at the usual place for Songwriting Simplified, but Jonny has been held up. I think he's explained in the chat here that he's at his work for training for his day job, and is therefore unable to get away because the training has overrun somewhat by the look of it. So I got a message from Jonny about 25 minutes ago saying, I think I'm not going to make it home because I'm still at training. And I said, yes, that's absolutely fine, mate. No problem at all. Because it's just so easy for me to set it up. All I do is just change the start screen image, and that's it, really. And away we go. So here we are. And there's a good number of you here tonight. Ken is having trouble by the look of it. Hi, Ken. Good morning. Good evening. And he says that he can't watch it on his TV. He says, same as last night, can't stream on my TV. Now that is interesting. I take it you have some kind of smart TV, and that's how you would normally do it. You'd normally watch by watching it on your smart TV, but looks like you're not able to do that, he says, but it works if I go to my page. Okay. That's interesting. I don't know why that might be. Let's see. What's going on? Search, and lots of folks having this kind of problem with YouTube. Okay, so it's got to be a smart TV problem, I suspect. So, I don't know. Or it's a particular problem, maybe it's a particular issue with YouTube and certain smart TVs. I have no idea what's going on, but you're here, which is good. So I don't know what device you're watching on, but I hope you are able to get the full benefit of being involved in the show anyway. So tonight's subject was going to be writing short songs, and what the best way about doing that is. So those of you that are involved in sync licensing and writing bits and pieces for film and TV, you will have some experience with this, because quite often your brief will be to write something that is really, really short for a particular thing. Particularly if you're involved in writing not just music that is going to be placed in a particular TV show, like maybe it's background music, or music that is being played in a scene, like maybe it's kind of what you would call fake radio music, i.e. your music is supposed to be played as if it's being played on a radio, which is being played in a scene. You know, that might be a situation that you're involved in, or you're specifically asked to write a particular piece of music in a particular style for a particular scene. And I have done that. I've written some film music. I write for the university here. We have several universities. We have the University of Edinburgh, and we have Napier University. Napier University has a filmmaking course, a filmmaking degree course, in fact. So I fairly often work with film making students to write for their short films. So some of their films are like little 10, 12, 15-minute films. And I have to write opening and closing music, and often incidental music throughout the film. So I kind of know a little bit about that as well. So the challenge is being concise and making your music make sense in a really concise amount of time, so that it has a clear, kind of start, middle, and end. And so that really is the challenge. And sometimes you're dealing with, really specific amount of time. So maybe like what you need to write is something that is exactly 31.7 seconds long. And that will mean that your phrase lengths might not be uniformly, 4-bar phrases, because to do so, it just wouldn't fit that exact length. So you have to be able to work around that, and you have to be able to work with unusual phrase lengths, and that means sometimes you're going to have to use some unusual time signatures to make it work. I've done that where I've had to write, I wrote something for a car chase scene once where it had to be kind of like a really up-tempo kind of 4-to-the-floor disco, kind of like disco, but frenetic disco was the style I was asked to write. And it was like 31.4 seconds. That's how long it had to be, this particular snippet, because it was literally only for part of the car chase scene that I was writing for. And so it had to be like disco in 4-to-the-floor, 140 beats a minute, 4-to-the-floor disco. And yet kind of like my last 4 bars had to have some unusual time signatures in order to make it fit this exact ending of this exact scene. So I had to watch the scene and watch it carefully and figure out exactly where I was going to put these odd time signatures. So it was like mostly 4/4 until you got to like the last 8 seconds of the piece of music, and I had to do like 7/8, 11/8, 13/8, and that was the only way I could make it. So it was like a 3-bar phrase with 3 different time signatures in order to make it fit. And but I had to keep that sense of quarter note pulse going all the way through. So the quarter note pulse had to go across the bar line. So there are challenges and things like that you have to deal with when you're working with exact and precise pieces of music. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about, or with Jonny tonight. That was the idea until, as I say, just a few minutes ago. So I'm sure some of you in the chat that are involved in sync licensing or involved in writing for TV and film, like I am, that you'll have your own little stories to tell where you're asked to write in a specific style and specific, bits and pieces. And you have to be prepared to make your music sound a little bit weird and unconventional at the same time. So let's go up to the top of the chat and see kind of what's going on, because you guys have been very vocal before the show started. John Edgar was the first one here. Pretty much as soon as I hit enter to set the show up, John was here and said, happy to be here. And then Lollipop Guild is here as well. Martin Weeks. You guys were chatting before the show, and Jonny says, so sorry I can't join you guys tonight. Training for my night job went way over. Yes. Let's see. Yeah, and Jonny was saying, I was in training all day, and it's overtime for sure. Yes, I bet it is. Big thank you to Jonny Lipsham for taking it on. Well, you're very welcome, my friend. It's not a problem at all. Sometimes we just have to do this. There was the other week when I couldn't do the show at all, and so you had to kind of do something. And you kind of improvised a very, very cool show. So I appreciate that. Bill Brock is here. He says, hi, is this songwriting show Studio One related, or is the Studio One live show on another channel? Thanks. I enjoyed yesterday's show. Bill, this is Songwriting Simplified, which we normally do over on Jonny's channel on a Wednesday. Every Wednesday we do a show called Songwriting Simplified. And normally it's on Jonny's channel, but Jonny's not at home. He's not there. So I'm doing it tonight. And we're doing it here instead. And Martin says to Bill, you're in the right place. Normally it's on Jonny's channel. Yep, that is correct. Yeah, ignore that. Bill says, I noticed that this stream starts in 8 hours, 3 a.m. Is that right? No. Ignore that. When I set up the show in a hurry, and for some reason it defaults to 8 a.m. Pacific. I don't know why it does that. And I didn't really change any of that because I just didn't have any time to. So ignore the start time. So yeah, ignore all of that. Jonny Lipsham is in Scotland, so it's a time zone thing. No, it's not actually a time zone thing at all. It's when you set up the show, that's how YouTube defaults to. I don't know why it does. I suspect it's because where YouTube is based. YouTube is based in the Pacific time zone, so I suspect that has something to do with it. But yes, the start time is nothing to do with that. It's just to do with the fact that I just hit start for the show, and I didn't really bother about changing the time. Normally I do. Normally I set it so it is midnight UK time, which works out to be 6 p.m. Central. So, but I didn't do that tonight. I just didn't have the time to. So don't worry about the time zone. And as Martin Weeks correctly notes, I am 6 hours in the future, folks. If you're in the central time zone area, I am 6 hours in the future for you guys. So it is already February 20th here, and it is 13 minutes past midnight here. So yes, I am a late guy. So there you go. Let's see. Bill says, I talked with Jonny on the HSD Facebook pages. Really knows his stuff. Well, that's very kind of you to say so. I like to think that I really know my stuff. I have been doing this for long enough. I've been involved in the music business professionally for, let's see, 30-something years now. Yeah, because I started when I was a teenager. I actually started getting my first paid gigs when I was a teenager. So, and I kind of just carried on doing that, really. I thought, hey, I can make money making music. So I kind of just carried on. Once I realized I could do that, I just kind of carried on and didn't really stop. So I never really took a normal job like everybody else. Apart from one time when I worked... I worked in an investment bank for 6 months. It was horrendous. And I immediately quit. And I was just like, I will take not having any money at all. I would rather have that than work in an investment bank. It was awful. So I did that for 6 months. But I have also taught in a high school, teaching music in a high school music department. I did that for 2 years. Did that about 12 years ago. Just for 2 years, you know. I figured it was something that I ought to have as a qualification, so that, you know, as I get older, it's something I can just gradually wind down my performing career and kind of move more into an education groove. And kind of that's what I've been doing ever since. I don't teach in a high school anymore, but I certainly, most of what I do now professionally is mixing and session musician work and education. That's what I do full time, pretty much. I don't play gigs anymore. Have not played a gig in probably about 9, nearly 10 years now. So yeah, that's kind of my story, really. Having started as a performing musician when I was about 13 years old, I think I started getting paid to play music. And I stopped about 10 years ago. Mostly because my band I had a 12-piece band, and I ran that for 21 years, and basically became less and less economically viable to run the band. So I folded the band a few years back, and I've not played a gig since, really, apart from the occasional one. But my time of playing 4 or 5 nights a week are gone. It's over and done. But that's okay. I don't mind. Let's go and have a look. John Edgar is saying hello. Did I survive the storms? Yes, just about. We had Storm, Kiara, and then immediately after that, Kiara's boyfriend Dennis turned up. And Dennis was aggressive and loud. And made a hell of a mess. Especially to places like Wales and the northwest of England. They got the worst of Dennis's wrath, to be honest. There is a lot of flooding. Here in Edinburgh, we got a lot of rain, a lot of snow, that then went back to rain again. And it was extremely windy, and we had periods of torrential rain. I did my Studio One meetup in Edinburgh on the 15th of February, right at the peak of Storm Dennis. Yes, I braved the elements. I went out into the rain and into the high winds and torrential rain into town to go and meet up with other Studio One users. I got absolutely soaked and blown about and turned up at Starbucks looking like a drowned rat. And only one of the 8 people that I was expecting turned up. And that was only because he lived just up the road from the Starbucks. But he was there, and we had a great time. We had a great chat, and we had a great time of talking about Studio One and what we love about Studio One. And we talked about that for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And then we talked about things that he would like to see in the future of Studio One and kind of future development and that kind of thing. So we talked about those kind of things, and it was great. It was really, really good. It would have been nice if there were more guys there, more people, but there weren't. Storm Dennis kind of put paid to that, but it was a great time. It was a really, really good time. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was well worth going to meet. Philip was his name. He's from Poland, and he's a great guy. We had a good chat, and I will be repeating my Studio One meetup probably the end of March. So if you are in the Edinburgh area, and I don't think anybody in the chat tonight is, but if anyone who is subscribed to my channel is watching this on either tonight or on the replay, and you are in the Edinburgh or Glasgow kind of Lothians Central Belt area of Scotland, end of March, stay tuned to my channel, subscribe to my email list, because I'll be putting out announcements about it, and Presonus will be getting on board to market it as well. So there'll be all sorts of announcements going out about that to repeat the Studio One meetup, and the idea is it's going to become a regular event. So that would be extremely cool. Sorry, I kind of got a little bit sidetracked there because we were talking about songwriting and writing really short pieces, and I got a little bit sidetracked there. So let's kind of go and see what the current chat is. Oh, we had a super chat donation from Michael Johnson, who says, "Wish I could do more. You're an awesome dude and composer / producer. God bless." Michael, that is very kind words, and that is very generous of you to send me $5. I really appreciate that. That is very kind. And if anybody else would like to follow in Michael Johnson's footsteps, please do hit that super chat button, especially if you've got a really burning question that you just want to ask. Now, tonight is normally Songwriting Simplified, and we can keep it songwriting orientated, but if you've got something really burning about an issue in Studio One, or a particular mixing thing that you are having a struggle with, or a production thing that you're having a struggle with, then put it in the chat. And if you really want to get my attention to jump onto that question first, then please do hit the super chat button just like Michael did, and donate a few dollars or pounds or yen or Filipino currency, whatever it is that takes your fancy, whatever you have. Let's see. Tony Cardona says, "Do you ever sleep?" I do, but I don't need a lot. I only need maybe about 4 hours sleep. So, I have to be up. I absolutely have to be up in the morning, no later than 7 o'clock in the morning. So count back 4 hours, and that's about how much sleep I get. He also asks, what are the dimensions of your room? Do you ever record other people there? I see you don't have any bass traps. Actually, I do. I have quite a lot of acoustic treatment in here, which I brought over from my previous studio. Now, the dimensions of this room are different to my old studio. My old studio was smaller and much more of a elongated rectangle shape. This is still rectangular, but it's bigger. So I'm probably going to need some more acoustic treatment, and I just have not got round to getting that yet. But what I have at the moment does tame a lot of the frequencies that are particularly troublesome in this room. And this room has a bit of an issue around about 400, 450 hertz. So I have some acoustic treatment that it is dealing specifically with that for the most part. But I do have bass traps. There are bass traps in the corners behind the camera. You cannot see them because they are behind the camera. But I don't have any in this corner because that is an adjoining wall with the window. Can't actually put a bass trap in that corner. It just won't fit. And then in the other corner, that is where all my cases are kept. So I have my guitar case, my bass case, and a couple of an old computer. What else we got in there? And we got some drum hardware in the corner, which you might just be able to make out, and a spare keyboard stand. So there's like spare bits and pieces. There's a couple of mic stands hidden in the back there as well. So I do record people in here. In fact, just recently I had a folk duo in here, which is basically acoustic guitar and vocals and 12-string guitar, which is very, very cool. Recording both the guitars and then recording both their vocals, and then we overdubbed a whole bunch of other things as well, which we did in the box. But recording their instruments live was very, very cool. I have a bunch of mics which are hidden in this cupboard behind me here. There's a whole bunch of stuff back there. There's 4 or 5 mics in there and a few other bits and pieces. So I have plenty for recording people in here, and have recorded people in here pretty successfully. So I have happy clients, which is a nice thing. Nice thing to have, happy clients. But yes, I do have bass trapping in here and stuff. Mika is here. He says, when you said not enough guys showed up at your Studio One meetup, why does Studio One seem to be male-dominated? Logic users and groups are far more representative of musician demographics. I use guys in the loosest sense of the phrase, Mika. I wasn't being gender-specific by saying that. Maybe it's different over there in the United States, but certainly over here, it's gender, using the term guys can actually be gender neutral. So yeah. And actually, I know and train a number of female mix engineers who are using Studio One. And I work with female artists who also use Studio One to do their recordings as well. So my personal experience of Studio One demographics is actually fairly evenly split between male and female. But I just happen to know for a fact because I get to see who has actually purchased, or there were free tickets, but people have actually gone and got tickets from the Eventbrite event page, on the Personas Eventbrite page. I just happen to know that all of them were men. That's just the way it is for my particular Studio One meetup. So there you go. But yes, it's the term is gender neutral, pretty much. But in this particular case, I know that all 8 of them were male. And that might be a demographic that is just unique to Scotland and Studio One users. Not 100% sure about that, because there is a young lassie called Anna, who she's now based down in London, but she was up here in Edinburgh for a while. And I was training her in Studio One. She is a recording engineer, And I was training her in Studio One because she really wanted to get to know it. So, and she's a very, very, very good recording engineer. So, yeah, I actually have reasonable experience with working with women in the business. But I don't know officially what the exact demographics of Studio One users globally is and what the balance between male and female users is. I don't know. You would actually probably have to reach out to Presonus themselves and ask that. So I don't know. There are some awesome women in the industry. There, in my opinion, there are not enough women in the music industry, particularly in production and mixing and mastering and recording engineers. There should be loads more than there are. I don't think it's that good for our industry, for it to be so male dominated, to be honest. It'd be nice to see a lot more women coming through and being at the top level, at the top flight of our industry and being successful. One particular lady springs to mind, and that's Sylvia Massey. She is awesome. She is amazing. She's an amazing recording and mixing engineer. And her tutorials that she does for various online platforms that I have seen, she is extremely good and she's extremely knowledgeable. I'd love to see a lot more women in the business like her, to be honest. Let's see. Billy Morgan is talking to Michael Johnson about touring. Lollipop Guild says it's the same in the sync licensing group. Yeah, not so many women. Yeah, it's that. I think that's fairly fair. That by that I mean it's actually fairly accurate that there are a dearth of women in the business. I would love there to be a load more, to be honest. It would be terrific if there were. Tony Cardonas says Emily Lazar is my favorite. Yes, there's a name I have heard before. Not 100% familiar with her work, but that is a name I have heard definitely before. But Mika, you have raised an excellent point. That is true. Not enough women in the business, and certainly I would argue therefore that there probably aren't that many women who are Studio One users. And it would be awesome if there were more. So yes, good point. We have 32 people watching, 17 likes, and we have had $5 of donations, which is awesome. That's very cool. So let's keep it going. It is past the hour, so we are exactly at the halfway point. So let's keep the questions coming, and we can expand this out. It doesn't have to be about songwriting, but it'd be great if we could kind of keep a songwriting focus, because it is Songwriting Simplified after all. But yes, let's keep the questions coming. Let's see. Lollipop Guild says, I believe it's generational. We're witnessing one of the first generations of women who worked and cared for the household both full-time. Women are missing from a lot of key positions everywhere. I think you're possibly right, but I think maybe World War II had a lot to do with changing some of that. Because, you know, when and the First World War, I think, was probably the start of it as well, where the men went to war. By and largely, it was men. 99-point-something% were men that went to war, and the women stayed at home. But the country had to continue to run. When you went to war, everything else had to keep going. So things like coal production had to keep going, and also war machines had to be made. Planes needed to be built. Tanks needed to be built. guns and shells needed to be produced in huge quantities. And yes, there were some men that were specialists in the industry and therefore had protected jobs, which meant that they didn't have to be, they would be exempt from being drafted into the army or the navy or the air force or whatever. And so, a lot of women became fantastic engineers and mechanical engineers, and they built planes. They maybe became flight engineers for the Air Force, and so when planes came back from doing missions, if they were shot up pretty badly, they would be there and they'd be fixing them up and getting them back out to go off on the next mission. So women played a massive role in what had been previously male-dominated industry. So they picked up a lot of skills that they hadn't previously done. As you point out, Lollipop Guild, that mostly they were full-time, in the household, and then of course picked up all of these skills and everything else. And after the end of the war, they wanted to carry on doing those kind of things, and rightly so. Because they were the backbone of our countries during the war. So they rightly should have been encouraged to continue. Bill Brock says, can you please demonstrate a typical template you might use for your songwriting? Good question. Can I do that? I might be able to do that. You're going to have to give me a few minutes to get that set up, because I don't actually have that set up. But I can do. Just bear with me just a wee minute whilst I do that. Should be able to set that up. I'm just starting Studio One up, and as soon as that is up, I'll kind of show you kind of where I start. I don't have anything typical that I have for songwriting, but I can certainly show you something that is fairly typical of how I would have things. Let me just choose this. Oh, let's turn those off. Okay, I'll show you this, and this is kind of where I start. Let's go over to here. There we go. And here is my Studio One screen. And this is kind of where I start. I have a vocal track, which is sending to an effects channel for a little bit of reverb. Don't know why it's muted. Let's turn that off. And I have a Fender Rhodes track. And if I really wanted to, I'd also send that to a little bit of reverb. And I would bring in a drum loop as well. And I'd fiddle about with the tempo. And that's kind of where I start, really. A vocal track for kind of a guide vocal. Piano track. I would just be working with fiddling around with chord changes at this point. And I would bring a drum loop in as well. So I might go over here to drum loops, and I've got some different styles of loops here. I've got some nice jazz ones here as well. Like if I wanted to do something that's a little bit more kind of smooth jazz orientated, I've got those. Let's see. And I got some brushes ones, and I got some standard jazz ones. Let's see. And they are, as you can see, these are all multi-tracked out already. So these are great fun. I can just bring these in. I do have some stereo drum loops as well if I want to bring those in. I have those on a different drive. But I've got, plenty of options. Like, if I just want a fairly simple loop, I could do something like this one here. Nice little intro. Something like that, and I can loop it if I want to. Something a little bit funkier, maybe. So, you know, I'll fiddle about and I'll find a style of a drum loop that I might like that kind of fits what's kind of going on in my head for the song. And then I'll just drag that in and I'll just duplicate that loads and loads. Maybe, I don't know, 32 bars worth of duplication. And then I will, you know, spend some time playing along to that. I'll put it on a loop and I'll spend some time playing along to that on the roads and working out my chord changes for my song. And so this is kind of where I start, really. Drum loop. Get that in here. So I'll maybe get this drum loop in here, as I say, and you know, I'll hit the D key and duplicate this a few times, and maybe set up a loop for it, and you know, stick that on loop like that, and then I'll just kind of play along to it for a bit and. I don't know, something like something like that. And I would play about until I'm happy with it, and I'm getting something that really works. And so when I'm kind of happy with what I've got, I would maybe write out the chord changes on paper, or I'd maybe use the chord track or something like that, because I'm going to need those later. Once I've worked out what my chord changes are, I'm going to need those later, because as I start to bring in other musicians when I start recording the song, they're going to need those chord changes. So as I bring other guitar players, because I think as I said in my splitter video, you know, I'm not a guitar player. I'm not even a fake guitar player. I'm a fake guitar player, and I'm proud of it. And so, you know, once I start bringing in other guitar players and trumpet players, sax players, and all of that, and I build the song out, this is kind of where I start. I don't have a template, but maybe I should. Maybe I should just save this as a template. You know, have like a drum loop track and a vocal track and a Fender Rhodes track, and you know, just have that kind of set ready to go. Maybe you're right. Maybe that's what I should do. So there you go. That's probably what you are talking about. Let's go and see if I'm right about that. So I hope that helps. I'm just going to go back up the chat, because whilst I've been doing that, you guys have been putting stuff in here. Let's see. Kyle is here. Kyle Draduzriak is here. He says, I'm breaking the Enigma code and getting man to the moon. Yes, lots of women were involved in that. Absolutely, especially at Bletchley Park, breaking the Enigma code. Lots of women. And in fact, it was a woman that wrote the entire course correction manual for the Apollo program in order to be able to get Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins to the moon and back. She wrote all of the programming, all of the software programming for the Apollo navigation computer. And from what I've seen, I've actually seen this thing. The book is like that thick, and it's filled with her computations and her code for the Apollo navigation computer. It's amazing, and she's probably one of the most intelligent people on the planet, I would argue. But yeah, the Apollo program and going to the moon would never have happened without her. Let's see. Lollipop says we're now learning better ways to manage those things. Hopefully, we'll put new information to good use. Yes, I agree. Just Bob says baseball needed to be played. World War II changed the landscape of the work environment for sure. Dual income family, more money to spend equals more wage payout and higher prices for consumers. Yeah, that's all true. Tony is also contributing and answering the question that Bill had about templates. He said there are some great templates included with Studio One, including 16-track recording templates, electronic music, single person with guitar. That is very, very true. If you go and look in the when you create a new song, there's a couple of template tabs. There's a user one, which is where you've created one to use for different scenarios. And then there are some that are set up for different Personas interfaces and different scenarios, different recording scenarios. So you might have a 16-track recording scenario. You might just have guitar and vocal, 2-channel setup kind of scenario. And those are great because those just give you exactly what you need. They give you 2 inputs, like for the guitar vocal setup. It gives you 2 inputs, a guitar input and a mic input, and they're all set up. All the channels are organized and labeled, and they're ready to go with the tracks armed and monitored, ready to go. So those are extremely useful, and you can customize those. So you maybe start off with one of the Personas templates, and then kind of add or subtract to it, and then save it as your own template. That's what I would recommend. And therefore, you build up a little user library of how you use Studio One and different scenarios in which you use Studio One. And therefore, you have a template for just about every scenario that you know you're going to be working in. I have a few of those because I do some voiceover production. In fact, I do a lot of voiceover production for different organizations. I do some continuity announcing, and if I'm not the person who is the voice of the continuity announcement, then I'm recording the person who is, or they are sending me their track, and I am mixing it and putting in, if required, putting in the music bed and everything as well. So I have a template for that set up already, and all of that's just ready to go with, when that template loads up, the vocal track has an EQ and a limiter on it. With settings already set up. So the EQ is already set up, and the limiter is already set up how I need it, how I want it. So basically, all I do is I just bring in the tracks, and I hardly have to do any mixing because I know the EQ is going to be thereabouts, and all I'm doing is maybe a little bit of tweaking, and then the rest of it's just editing the audio, and then I export it and send it off to whomever requires it. So in some cases it's a radio station that requires it, or it's a TV station that requires it, and I just send them off. Let's see. Ken Moss is here. He says, how do you recommend balancing the template for efficiency versus not falling into a repetitive rut and remaining freely creative when writing or even mixing? That's a really good question. Templates are a tool. They are a place to get you started, or they are a place to get you going quickly. So, for example, if I have a band here, like this acoustic duo that I was talking about, when they are in here, they recorded a 12-song album, and we did it in a 4-hour session. 12 songs in 4 hours. So we set up the first session, the first song, and then after that, and I used that to create a template, and I saved that as a brand new template. And so every time I was opening a new session for the next song, it was dead easy. I just put the title and the tempo in. They told me what the title of the next song is and what the tempo was. I put that info data in, hit OK, and then that template with the required tracks and settings instantly came up with the new tempo and everything else, and then we could just hit record. And that's how I worked with them. And we did 12 songs, and it all worked off a template. Now, that meant we could get the basic tracking done in 4 hours, which is what we did. So we got the basic guitar track down and the lead vocal track down. And then once we'd done that, then we'd go back over those songs and we'd start to produce them out. So we would add things as we needed to. Like there was a couple of songs where it was just the guitar, the vocal, and the Persona Symphonic Orchestra. There was one song like that. And then the other song, I did some drum programming. I played some Fender Rhodes, played a little bit of Hammond organ, and we had some backing vocal tracks to go with that. And I played my fretless bass quite a lot on the record. And so we basically had this basic template that we then just added to as we needed for the production for that particular song. And then we moved on. So we got all the basic tracking done first, and then we went back and started to produce out each of the songs. So I hope that kind of helps answer that question. So having the template there meant that we could efficiently get through the basic tracking for each of the songs very quickly and get 12 songs done in 4 hours without a break. So that worked really, really well. Then we took a break. We went and had lunch. We came back after a 2-hour lunch, and then we started to produce out all the songs. And then once they went home, I carried on in here over the course of the next couple of days and finished off all the additional production stuff and editing, and then I started mixing. And by I think we completed the whole thing from tracking to production, mixing, and mastering. I think we did the whole thing in 4 days. Couldn't have done that without templates, to be honest. So there you go. Michael Johnson said that one loop sounded similar to Dave Brubeck Tape 5. Yeah, it kind of did a little bit, except it wasn't in 5, it was in 4. But yes, I could certainly see what you meant by that. Lollipop Guild is bowing out. That's a shame. Let's see. Turning into a mope, just what the world needs. A moping definitely bedtime. Yes, it's nearly 1 a.m. here, so we'll go for maybe another 15 minutes, and then we'll wrap up. Let's see. Lollipop says, are you familiar enough with the synths to demo the mod sections of the VSTs? With the synths. Are you talking about the Mai Tai and Mojito and all of that in Studio One to demo the mod sections of the VSTs? I don't use them a lot, to be honest. I should probably do some videos on them. So I will add that idea to the list, and I'll do some videos on the synths, because I don't actually have any content on those instruments, and it would be good if I did that. So yes, I could certainly do that. Bill says, I don't really have templates except for some specific tasks. I find Studio One to be so fast and intuitive, you don't really need one. Contact, on the other hand, yeah, I take your point about Contact. We've dropped down to 21 people. At one point, we had about 34 people in here at one point. So we have dropped off a wee bit, which is a bit of a shame. But yes, Studio One is very, very fast and intuitive. But the templates are there to kind of make it even faster. So certainly I would recommend, if I know, Ken, that you're a composer, so I would recommend kind of setting up what you need to start with, what are the things that you do when you're first setting up a Studio One session that you do every single time? Do you set up a piano track every single time? Do you set up a vocal track every single time? Do you have an instance of presence available, and you do that every single session? Because if you're doing those 3 things every single session to start your session, that's taking up time that you could just be using with actually composing. So you can make it even faster by having a composing template that has those things there, ready to go, available. So all you do is you type in your title, even if you don't have one, just put in the date or whatever, and you can always rename it later. Just put in the date and a tempo that you want to work in, and hit OK, and there you go. You've got your piano track, you've got your vocal track, you've got your instance of presence ready and available right there, good to go. And then you can just get to composing rather than creating a blank session going, okay, I'm going to add a piano track, I'm going to add my vocal track, I'm going to drag in an instance of presence. Yeah, you can do that every single time if you really want to. If that's the way you prefer to work, do that. But, why not just create a template where all of those things are just in an instant there? I didn't use templates for a long time. It took me ages to get into using templates. But once I did, I tell you, it makes everything so much quicker to do it that way. Tony says you choose styles after you go into the create new song prompt. Yes, that is exactly correct. That's where all those are. Mika says rejection is constant. Be ready to have many backup ideas and possibly finished product just in case. One has to have a thick skin when filling music-specific requests. You're absolutely right. In fact, I would argue that in any area of the music business, you have to have a thick skin, because you're going to get people that are going to tell you you're crap. There are just lots of people that do that. They will tell you you don't know what you're doing. I get that a lot. Throughout my career, I've had people say, you can't sing. Your songs are shit. There you go. $1 for the swear jar. But it's an appropriate word. I've had people say that to me. You're a crap drummer. You're a crap piano player. You don't know what you're doing. You can't mix to save your life. I get emails and I get messages like that often. If I was the sensitive type, I'd be done. I would have been finished 20 years ago. I wouldn't have lasted, as long as I have in the music business. If I had a thin skin. You have to be thick-skinned. You have to let those kind of things just wash over you, wash off your back, like water off a duck's back. You just have to. Otherwise you get nowhere. Some people will, you'll spend ages writing for a particular brief, and you'll come up with something that you think is exactly, you think they're going to love this. They are going to think this is perfect for this brief. They are going to love it. And you send it to them, and they send you an email back saying, no, that's not what we want. We want this, and you've given us something else. So we're going to hire somebody else. I could take that personally when that happens, and it does happen. I could take that personally and say, how dare you? I've put in hours and hours and hours to make this work for you. How dare you? I could, but I don't, because that's how the business works. That's it. Got to get used to it. If you want to be successful, or even just make enough money to have a reasonable quality of life in the music business, you have to be, serious about, you have to know yourself. You have to know what you are good at. And you have to have some confidence in what you can do, to the point where, you don't get beat down by people being negative about you. Michael says, am I ignoring your messages? No, I've responded to several of your messages. But I don't have Facebook on when I'm doing this show, if that's what you're referring to. You said, I'm going to PM you. I'm hearing a common thing that I think I might be able to give you a little advice about. Okay, well, yeah, please do send me the message. I'll pick it up after the show. But yes, I'm not ignoring your messages. I think I have responded to several of your posts in this chat, and I certainly responded to your very kind donation. So no, I'm not ignoring you. And And a lot of you are doing the right thing here. You're typing that Jonny Lipsham Studios, which is perfect. You've learned well. Because though, the chat does it on one of my shows, the chat does move a little bit slower because I don't have 50 or so viewers, unlike Jonny. So the chat on his shows goes by really, really fast. On mine, not quite so fast. So it's a little less important. But yes, having the wee at Jonny Lipsham Studios orange box is helpful because when I see those, I know that's something that is important. Mika says there is zero content on YouTube regarding programming Studio One synths, especially the mod sections, assignments, modifiers, and controllers. Someone needs to do it. Yes, I would not be surprised if my good friend Gregor Baerly, I can never pronounce his last name properly, he will correct me. Yeah, Gregor from Presonus, good friend of mine. He is a fantastic content creator for Presonus, but he's also a really, really good electronic music producer, and he does a lot with synths. So it wouldn't surprise me if we don't see some content from him on the synths as well. But yes, it's not something I do a lot of. In fact, I don't think I really use, any of the synths that much in what I do. So, but yes, I will. I'll definitely have a look at that and consider it something that I could actually do. Ken says, "Thanks, Jonny. Good advice." You're welcome, mate. Mika says, "Not enough people hearing your comments regarding having a thick skin." Well said. Yeah, it's very, very important. I would argue that having a thick skin is a prerequisite to working in the music business. And I'm not sure that classroom music education teaches that particularly. We're very good at teaching music theory. We're very good at teaching how to compose. We're very good at teaching how to analyze music, how to break it down, how to take it apart, how to, look at how a piece of music was written, how to look at thematic and motivic development, having a look at harmony and all of those things. We're very good at teaching those kind of concepts, but we're not so good at teaching what it's like to be in the music business and actually have a life in the music business and what you kind of need to have a successful life in the music business. We are not very good at teaching those kind of things, and we should be. It should be a part of music education. So, and I certainly, when I was a high school music teacher, I taught that. And as Rich Wrestler says, no ego helps a lot. Yes, it does. Definitely helps. Unfortunately, the music business is replete with people with oversized egos that need a lot of massaging. Unfortunately. So let's see. Bill says, it's like playing a session. Bring more than one set of riffs and figures. At least have them in your head. Yes, definitely. I agree with that. Rich says, you talk about arrangement and instrumentation, changes that can make or break a song, even if it's only two chords. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely right. If you get the instrumentation wrong, if you get the instrumentation and the arrangement of the song wrong, even if the song is really well written and the recordings are really well made, if you get the instrumentation and the arrangement of the song wrong, you can kill the song and you can totally destroy a really good song. So, absolutely right. Really important that you start with a really, really good song that is well written, well arranged, and is produced well, is recorded well. Get all of those things right, and then everything else is icing on the cake. Those are your foundational things that you have to get right if you want to have a successful song. I have had a few very successful songs, but I've written a whole bunch of songs that have, a few people buy it, but not that many. I've had a couple of records where a lot of people have bought it and it's done really, really well. But I've had a few where hardly anyone has bought it. It's just how it is, you know. The nature of being creative in this business is that you're going to write some songs that you think are awesome and nobody is interested in them. And then you're going to write some songs which you think are crap and everybody loves them and they buy them. And you're just like, what? Sometimes the music business makes no sense whatsoever. It makes no sense whatsoever sometimes. And so you have to roll with it. You have to be able to improvise. Let's see. Selling products has become the music business. Yes, selling products is the music business. Music is a product. Unfortunately, it has become that for years and years and years. Probably nearer 100 years now. Maybe even over 100 years. Probably since maybe the middle of the First World War period. 1915, 1916, 1917, when, recordings were being experimented with. And, sheet music was a big thing. And, Tin Pan Alley in the late 20s, early 30s. That's kind of, for me, I think that's where the music business started, was Tin Pan Alley, and around that time of the late 1920s, early 1930s, when you had people like Irving Berlin and the Gershwin brothers churning out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs per week. And that's what they were paid to do. They were paid by music publishing companies to write hundreds and hundreds of songs per week. And that's what they would do. And they churn them out, sheet music. And that was the precursor to the record industry. So yeah, modern music business is, you can trace it all back to that, really. But anyway, we are 4 minutes over, so we will finish with this from Ken. He says, the music business is computer hard drives and high-speed internet. They are the ones making lots of money off of downloading and streaming listeners, not musicians. Unfortunately, you're quite correct. Unfortunately. I don't put my stuff up on some of the streaming platforms because I know that you just don't make any money out of it. But to be honest, that's not the reason why I put my records out there. I put my records out there because I like making records. Even if nobody buys them, I don't care. I really don't care. I like making music. I like making records. And I put my music out there for people to listen to. But I mostly put my records out there because I like making it. I like the whole process from start to finish. And yes, it does involve a lot of time, a lot of effort, and all of that. But it doesn't bother me if nobody buys them. It's great when they do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking and I'm not belittling anybody that buys my music, because you guys that buy my records, you are awesome. But that's not why I put my music out there. I put my music out there because I like making records. And, I have my own publishing company, which means I can write whatever I want. Nobody tells me what style of music to write in. So I write whatever I want. And I experiment. And I put out my experimentations for the world to listen to. And if people like my experimentations, great. If they think it sounds weird and they're not digging it, that's okay. Doesn't bother me. I put it out there. I put my music out there because I like doing it. I like making music. And, what's the point in me making music here in my studio that nobody's ever going to get to hear? There's no point in that. If people like it, that's great. If people don't like it, that's okay too. One day, I'll write a piece of music or I'll make a record that everybody likes and thousands of people buy it. But I don't live for that. I don't live for that. I live for making music. and the enjoyment of the process of making music. That's why I do it. I don't do it for anything else. So there you go. That is pretty much going to be my last word. As Jonny would say, that his last word is later. Mine, yeah, I think we're pretty much done. Rich Lester says, I bought JL's last record on purpose. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it. Please do spread the word about that record. It would be great. I've put out a couple of singles over the last couple of years. I've not really put out an EP or anything for a while, but this year I'm going to. Okay? I'm going to put an EP out this year. I will definitely do that. I have just been busy with a whole bunch of other projects. And this year is probably going to be my busiest year yet in a variety of ways. A lot of which I cannot tell you anything about at this point, but you will find out. All will be revealed in due course as the year goes by, but there are a lot of very, very exciting things that I'm involved with at the moment. And I would love to be able to divulge. I would love to be able to tell you all about it, but I can't at the moment. Not allowed to. But you will know when I know. Well, I already know, but you'll know when I'm allowed to tell you. Believe me. You won't be able to get me to shut up about it. All right, folks. On that note, I am going to bid you a fond farewell. Thank you very much for coming out. And I will see you on Sunday for Sunday Night Live. And there'll be the next episode of the Splitter series coming out this week as well. Probably tomorrow or Friday. I'm going to have to juggle some of my scheduling. But yes, either tomorrow or Friday, the next Splitter episode will come out. And that'll be the last one. There's only going to be 3 in that little series. And then if you have any other videos that you would like to see, please send me an email to johnny@johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk and put the subject line, videos I would like to see. And then send me your list. If you've got a list of a few, great. And I will start to make them. And that will be what will go up on my channel. Because my channel is about you. Yes, you. And you, and you, and you. And what you want to learn from. And what, the content you want to see. So send me your emails, folks. Flood my inbox with the videos you want me to make. And I will make them. All right? So on that point, good night. And I can't get my music to play. There we go. Good night.